Hi there. If you like English language podcasts and you like people talking about nonsense, then you're in the right place. Welcome to Campcast. Today, my guest is Julia, or she prefers Julia sometimes. Surovegina from Discover English Teaching. Today, Julia and I talk about all sorts of nonsense, as promised. Everything from the history of the English language to football, which we are both berserkly unqualified to speak about, to what else do we speak about? Parenting, teaching and learning, all of that fun stuff. So without further ado, I hope you enjoy the show. Hey,
How's my connection?
It's amazing. Where are you?
What do you mean? Well, there's not much choice since the pandemic is still here. Obviously, I'm in Russia. What do you mean?
Oh, no, because the last time I spoke to you, you were in Turkey and you seem to be traveling around all over the place. I was like, where's Julia today? Because I haven't seen your house before. I don't know what it looks like.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Well, I'm trying to... I was in Turkey back then? That was like a year ago. Not a year ago, but a half a year ago at least. Yeah?
Well, that's how long it's been since we've seen each other.
Gosh. Oh my God. Okay.
Crazy,
all right.
Yeah. So you'll be happy to know when we were, by the way, we're already recording, so
Yeah,
Zoom
warns you.
Yeah.
No.
So when we were sort of preparing for the show, and you said, well, we don't just want to blabber for an hour. Like you don't know who you're dealing with, Julia. I'll blabber for 2 hours. Like last time it was great though, because we just went on like a random journey on some random tangent and just had a great time along the way.
That is true.
But this time you said you'd like to maybe talk a little bit about the history of English and that sort of stuff. You'll be happy to know I've done zero preparation.
I was like, for a second there, I was like,
who do you think you're dealing with, Julia, with your white walls? I like your white bricks. I'm not trying to be like a white supremacist or anything. I'm just saying it's a nice effect. It's a nice effect.
It's not an effect. It's an actual wall because it's a really old building. It's like in the city center, so it's an actual wall. They just painted it.
Yeah, no, I wasn't. When I said effect, I'm not suggesting that it was like a fake wall.
Oh, meaning like on camera.
Design effect. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I've got my stone walls over there. So there we go. We have the two.
We match.
Two best walls in all of the ESL online community. Is that controversial to say? I don't think so.
Definitely not. Wait a second. So were you serious when you said you didn't do any research?
Yeah, fuck that. What this is entertainment. This is not serious.
That is true. And honestly, when I told you about blabbering, I didn't really mean that because I am a talker too. So, and when two talkers meet, it's dangerous. But what I meant is that because last time you really kind of struck me as a guy who knows his stuff, so that's why I was like, I feel like you could share stuff with me that I don't know, especially about English.
And vice versa, certainly. And so there's loads of stuff that I can certainly learn from you. I'm always happy to learn, although not always very good at it, but I try. That's the main thing. But yeah,
let's try together.
Exactly. I think when you blabber, you can either blabber or have a plan or not know what you're talking about. You can't do all three at the same time. That's like the bullshit triangle. Do you know what I mean? Like you can blabber and improvise and not have a plan as long as you've got some sort of knowledge somewhere in the back of your brain. Do I? Maybe. I don't know. Let's see.
I think I've seen some people, some bloggers who blabber without the knowledge of anything. So they yeah.
Yeah, no, we're not going to name any names. I think I know who you're talking about. But yes, we will. They're not bloggers. They're blabbers.
That's true.
Anyway, Yul, tell me what's new with you? What's up? How's life?
That is so cute. Did you just call me Yul?
Yeah. Sorry, is that too informal?
No, it's adorable. Honestly, honestly, I think I've never heard a foreigner actually being able to pronounce my name properly, because like this Snacky's is like a tough thing for foreigners. Yeah. So you didn't say you. You said you.
Indeed.
Right?
Well,
So
it's
I'm
an
impressed.
interesting thing. So I wrote a Technical Tuesday a few months ago about cases in the English language. Anyone who's listening who doesn't know, like as in падежи. So there's this old-fashioned case which doesn't exist in modern Russian, or so people say. It does exist in, like, Hungarian, and with all those crazy languages that have like 18 million cases, and it exists in classical Latin. It's called the vocative case, звательный падеж, if anyone wants to look it up. And so this is the case where so if you take like a regular nominative word, right? For example, bog, okay? That's just a regular nominative case. But when you are speaking directly to someone, if you're speaking directly to God, then you would put it in the vocative case, Боже. Okay, so it's like, what's another good example?
Wait, we have that in Russian too.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's the Russian example. But in modern Russian, though, it's not super duper common, right? But you could argue that kind of, like, when you address someone like you or mom, babuy, nice, that kind of thing, I think that's vocative case. It's a form of someone's name which you only use when you're addressing them directly. So, as I said in the article, hashtag make vocative great again. Why not? Why not?
I'm stuck. It's just so weird, to find out like new stuff about the language that you've been speaking your whole life and you've never even thought about it. Like, yeah, because you can't really say, something like "you pошла," blah blah blah. Like you would use it only.
Well, you can't say "you пошла," but then that's a different type of conversation. Yeah.
That would be like,
anyway,
something, I guess.
So I asked you how you were, and then immediately interrupted you to speak about grammar. I'm sorry. Please tell me, how's life? What's going on?
Everything is great, I guess. Besides all the hell that is going on in the world, But I guess my take on this is that we just have to learn how to deal with it. Like, it's not going away. So that's why I kind of stopped freaking out or thinking that I'm somehow, affected by it, because everybody's affected. So that's why if I ignored that part, I'm great. Everything is awesome. What about you? Is it as hot there as it is here? Because
no, it's not crazy hot. What have you got there, degrees wise?
I'll tell you. And it's been like this for 2 months, and it's St. Petersburg. It's like we normally don't have summers at all. Well, if we're lucky, maybe like a week of 28, 27 degrees. Now it's 31. And it's been like this, every day.
That's like 9 degrees. We've got 22 degrees here.
Oh, that's
when I'm showing you my phone, you can't see it against the backlight. But
I trust you on that.
Yeah, it's been a fairly typical English summer. Just pretty much in constant rain with a little bit of sunshine. And some football recently, which I'll tell you, I felt so manly the other day because I don't watch sport. I don't enjoy sport at all. I like playing sport, and I like fitness and stuff, but I don't watch football or anything. But like recently, I got interested in like the Euro, because the UEFA Championship was on.
Kind of.
And I know. And I got kind of interested in it, and I went into work, and I was speaking about football with the guys, and I felt like such a man. I even texted my wife. I said, "Oh, darling, you're not going to believe it. I spoke about football with the guys at work." She was so proud of me. I think guys get really insecure. Women, of course, as well, but I think men especially, they've got this thing that they just, we just have to, to be on the same page as all of the other, the manly men, and you have to have some opinion about sports, and you have to know about cars, and you have to. And for the longest time, when I was a younger man, and I was a bit insecure, and I wasn't quite as psychologically
stable.
Yeah, stable. I was looking for resilient, let's say resilient. I didn't have my own personality, my own character. I really wanted to impress other people, and I would pretend that I knew what I pretend that I liked football and I knew what I was talking about. These days I do exactly the opposite. These days, if someone starts talking about football to me, I'll start talking about romantic poetry to them. I haven't got time anymore for this sporting nonsense. I guess you're not a huge sports fan as well, judging by your reaction.
No, I'm not. And honestly, I don't want to really go into that, but I was really pissed off when they allowed such an event to happen, because they canceled everything last year. They canceled Eurovision, they canceled this thing, they canceled lots of different things, and like this year it's not getting better. If anything, it's getting worse, and they just allowed everything, and now they're thinking to lock us down again because of this, because they allowed it's, I don't even know how many foreigners were like entering Russia, and now they all left, and now they're like, okay, we earned some money, now we can lock everybody down. It's like, are you serious?
But I mean, if you ask me, I'm a kind of a lockdown skeptic in the first place. I think you should let people take their own risks, and I don't really. Because it's like the Chernobyl disaster. There's 35 guys died as an immediate result of the Chernobyl disaster, and then we don't know how many thousands died from cancer and pituitary gland complications after that. It's the same thing with this lockdown. Every point that the economy falls, a certain amount of people die. You can do that morbid calculation. And so how many people have been saved by the lockdown? Some, I'm sure. But how many people have missed cancer screenings, have missed operations, have not been able to see their loved ones? Suicide is up, drug use is up, abuse from domestic abuse and child abuse is up. I don't know if that was a really good idea. And people shouldn't listen to me for public health advice. If you're coming to me for health advice, you're an idiot. Please do not do that. But I don't know that it was a good idea. So what you said that you're kind of skeptical of opening things up at the moment. What's your alternative? Would you keep it locked down?
No. Actually, it was vice versa. I was like, because it doesn't make any sense to me, because first they open up the country, for the first time in a year and a half. And they allow so many foreigners to come in because, well, let's face it, I'm pretty sure our government is making a lot of money. Money. Yeah, exactly. And then, immediately it's, I don't know, it was like 2 days ago, I think, the final, right? I suck at it.
I don't know. Sunday.
Yeah. So recently. And now they're thinking about locking everybody down. So I think it's ridiculous,
What final are you talking about? UEFA?
Yeah.
But that was in London. The final was in London.
No. Wait, you see how terrible? Maybe we're talking about
classic example of here's my opinion and this is what I think about it. It's the wrong city, Julia. Whatever. I still think that.
No, there was something connected to football happening here in St. Petersburg. It was chosen among all European. There were different European cities. Maybe both London and St. Petersburg were on the list.
I think we are the two worst people on the internet to speak about this.
I don't even know why.
But so I think the way that the UEFA thing worked, UEFA Championship, was that because there's some matches happen. Yeah, because the semi-finals with the England match happened in Rome. So I'm guessing there were some matches in St. Petersburg as well. There must have been. But yeah, it wasn't the final. The final was in Wembley in London.
There were just gigantic fan zones, with just hundreds or thousands of people watching everything, and nobody cared about social distancing and stuff like that. So that's why I am totally against lockdowns per se, because it doesn't matter how terrible the situation is, because I believe actually, I don't know, again, because thank God I haven't faced it too closely. So maybe I could change my mind in the future, for instance, touch wood. But I think that it's also about, this collective immune system. If we sit at home and we're never, facing the virus, then that probably means that, your immune system goes down or up. I'm not sure. Again, I suck at medicine too. Anyway, you know what I mean? Like, when you're exposed to viruses and infections, somehow your body deals with it.
And that works not only on a medical / immunological level, it also works on a psychological level as well, because it's about building resilience, right? It's the same logic where if you keep your child wrapped up in cotton wool and you don't let him eat worms, it's like proverbially, don't let him play in the dirt and eat worms.
I was like, okay. That what you do there.
Then they're not going to develop, and you don't let them play with other kids who have chickenpox and let them catch chickenpox at an early age, that kind of thing. You need to strike that balance, right? But, and again, I'm talking shit because I'm not a parent, so I don't know what I'm talking about. But I would guess that you need to strike that balance between anarchy and too much control. The same, I think, you can say about a child's psychological development. You need them to have setbacks. You need them to make mistakes. You need them to have a tough time. You need to tell them off. They need to get into trouble. Because have you ever like met one of those kids or taught one of those kids who they've been wrapped in cotton wool their whole life? And so I used to teach this girl in Tumen, and she was not even a teenager anymore. By the time I taught, she'd been studying at our school for ages, but by the time I taught her, she was 20 something, and she had no understanding of the world. She didn't know she didn't know black from white or left from right. She wasn't allowed to walk from her building, from her bed to the garage. Her granddad or her dad had to go with her to make sure she's safe. And every time she got to school, she called her mum to let her mum know she'd arrived safely. And she was a bright girl, a bright girl. And it was such a shame. Like, her parents just gave her no room, no space to make mistakes and to grow. It's a shame.
So sad. That's terrible, because can you believe how lonely she must feel, and how, because eventually she would have to go out, there into the world, and she would be traumatized mostly by the things that everybody else is already used to. I actually recalled a very similar situation that was in China, so maybe different cultures, because in China, I believe they also raise kids in a different way. But I remember it was sad, but also it was hilarious, because I believe like 24 or 25 at that moment. So I was teaching this, again, kid, but he was like 20 or 21. So definitely older than 20. And we had to rearrange our classes. We had private classes, so I had to ask him. I don't remember why, there was like a schedule problem, and I had to ask him to come later or something. And his parents, they didn't allow this to happen, because they said, well, we cannot bring him here to the school. And I'm like, well, he could take a bus, and they're like, no, he's too young. And I'm like, people, I'm 4 years older than him, and I'm in China on my own, in another country. He's sitting here, it's like ridiculous, really.
Yeah, there's a lot of that goes on. It's I remember when do you know where Gibraltar is?
I don't think so.
Gibraltar is it's one of those weird leftovers from the British Empire. It's a small overseas British territory in the south, just to the south of Spain. So it's the weirdest place, actually. If you cross the border from Spain into Gibraltar, everything changes. You're no longer in Spain, and suddenly you've got the typical red English phone boxes and post boxes, and it looks like England. And you're walking in the morning. There's lots of fog comes in from the Straits of Gibraltar, because it's on the Mediterranean. Well, this fog comes in. You're walking around in the morning really early. You could be in Plymouth or Portsmouth, or some southern naval town in the south of England. And then at midday, the sun comes in from the Straits of Gibraltar and burns it all off. And you're like, oh, shit. And there's palm trees and saying, oh, I'm in the Mediterranean. Yeah, I forgot. But anyway, so the Gibraltarians.
You've been there.
Yes. So at university, I studied Russian Spanish, and my dissertation was about Anglo-Spanish history, specifically naval history. So I wrote like a dissertation on naval history, and as part of my research, I went to Spain and I did. I stayed with a guy called Nick Chapman. He was the commander of maritime operations for Her Majesty's Royal Navy and a chief archivist and historian. Yeah, and it was really cool because at the time I was there, I studied at Manchester, and he invited me to stay with his family, and his daughter was about to go to Manchester University, so he put us together to, I could like tell her about it and tell her some good like pubs to go to or something. I don't know, but he was really nice, and I stayed with him for a few days. But he told me about. So the Gibraltarians are very like families, everything. They're very close-knit family community. And so we were talking about parents who just find it really hard to let go from, to their children. This kid that they were telling me about, they went to university in the UK and the whole family came along with her for the first week. The mum, the dad, the grandma, the brothers, the sister, they were all staying in a hotel. And instead of letting her just go and meet new friends and go to an awkward social gathering and be uncomfortable and speak to new people and speak to people you've never met before, they went every single night. They went for a big family meal at a restaurant. And then guess what happened at the end of that week? She went back with them to Gibraltar because she just couldn't bear it. That's family's great. Family's everything. Family's important, but
not everything.
Well,
it's important.
That's yeah, sure, it's important, but you just robbed your child of the next 4 years of her education. Shit. Like, why have a family if you're going to do that? If you're going to just destroy it?
It's selfish. That's most likely like this emptiness thing, when they just cannot handle it. So that's why they do it to their children. No.
Well, it's the archetypal Oedipal mother, right? So that like Oedipal complex. There's the Oedipal son, but there's also the Oedipal mother. And the Oedipal mother is the mother who says, I'm going to sacrifice everything for you, my child. I'm going to sacrifice all of my time. I'm going to take you to football practice. I'm going to take you to English class. I'm going to do everything. And if anyone ever offends you, I will attack them like a vicious hyena, like a wolf. And I'll do everything for you. But in return, you never leave me. And you stay in my basement, and it's the so creepiest thing. And it happens all the time. It's really creepy. Really
not creepy. All the time. Really? Nah.
No, I'm not all the time. I'm saying it happens very often.
Really?
Yeah. That's what that Gibraltarian stuff was.
With all the therapists, and all the books about, upbringing and stuff nowadays, people have, because I mean, like, sometimes I ask my parents, for instance, or, that generation, I'm like, how could you do that? Like to your children, for instance, how would you, didn't you think that it could traumatize them? And every single time they say, well, you guys have all those, encyclopedias and books, psychological books and Google and therapists. We didn't have anything. We just basically acted on a whim, on emotions, on an instinct, So that's why nowadays it's just a shame, to not be like a good enough parent, a decent parent, let's say.
Although the flip side to that argument is that because there's so much support there, if you just put one foot wrong, whose fault is it? Well, that's your fault. Whereas previously it was just like, that's just society. Yeah. What always makes me feel what always makes me feel like this? Toothpaste. If you go to the nearest supermarket, right, or even little shop, you go to like the little pichorочка on the corner. You go and you choose some toothpaste. There's like 50 different toothpaste types. It's unbelievable. There's so much fucking toothpaste in the shop. So every time because if you think like 40 years ago, you go to the shop, there's like especially in, Soviet countries where there was obviously, organized economy and mass production and all of that stuff. There was toothpaste. What toothpaste? That's it. You go to the shop, you take it, that's it. And if it's not the best toothpaste, it doesn't taste very nice, it doesn't clean your teeth very well, what are you going to do? That's life. Now, if you go to pichorочка and you spend 10 minutes choosing the perfect toothpaste from all of the different, super whitening, fresh breath, protect your cavities, Aquafresh, Colgate, blah, 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 whatever, natural ingredients. And then you take it home and it's not the best choice. Whose fault's that? That's you. That's your fault because you failed to pick the perfect toothpaste. So every time I go to the shop to buy toothpaste, I don't look at anything. I don't look at the price. I don't look at the name. I just take the first tube of toothpaste from the shelf. And every time I do that, it's like a little victory. I love it. True story.
And you never, like, you were disappointed with your choice, or just because?
Yeah, plenty of times, but it wasn't my choice.
Fault.
It was fate.
That is true. That is true. You kind of reminded me about the fact that, because you said, yeah, before we didn't really have the variety to choose from. And I just kind of recall this thing that, you know how in Russia we have two names for oats, for oatmeal?
What, you mean like ovsyanka?
Two words. No. And this is a good test for you. So, like, how familiar you are with Russian culture.
I hate.
We can say ovsyanka, yeah. Well, it doesn't excuse you.
Yes, quite right. Okay.
So we can say ovsyanka, and we can also say Hercules. Have you heard that?
But isn't that like a brand name?
Yes, but because there was no other choice in the USSR, you know, there was only that one, so it basically equaled, you know, you could say that or this, people would think of the same thing. And nowadays, if you tell a Russian person, maybe not like younger generation, but like, you know, older generation, you know, even starting from my generation, Hercules, they would always know that this is not Hercules. That is oatmeal, you know, because no choice.
Interesting.
By the way, I just realized, wait, I'm going to interrupt you because you actually taught me a new word today. Because when you told me about the country, I was like, hey, I'm actually quite good at geography. How come I realized I know the country, I just didn't know that it was pronounced this way. Because in Russian we say Gibraltar.
Oh, I see, yeah. Well, to be fair, that's
Gibraltar, so it's on the second syllable.
Gibraltar. To be fair, in Spanish, it is also pronounced with the syllable on the stress on the last syllable, as it is in.
And with h, the first sound. What's the first sound?
Gibraltar. Yeah.
Oh, Jesus Christ! Everything is different. Wow, Gibraltar. Yeah, I would never have recognized that. But you know how I recognize it? I think you said the nationality.
Oh, Gibraltarian.
Yeah, and I'm like, okay, now I get it. Now I know where it is. Yeah, awesome.
They're an interesting people. They're fiercely patriotic. Like if you go to Gibraltar, it's all pictures of the Queen and Union Jacks and British like memorabilia all over the place because they are desperate for people not to think of them as Spanish. They have a really fiercely protected national identity. This is part of what I wrote my my dissertation about, was like the Navy and naval history and what impact that has on your national identity. Like, for example, the British, we always like to think of ourselves as like an island nation who defend our borders by our powerful navy. A lot of the time, that's not really true. I mean, the Dutch invaded us in the 16th century, Battle of Medway, sailed right up the Thames and attacked us. No one knows about it. It's not taught in schools. And as well, there's like a really famous battle or invasion called the Spanish Armada. I don't know if you know about this. I guess that's not really.
No, not history. It's not my strong suit. No, geography is.
And there was this and it's like a huge deal. Like Trafalgar is another example. The Battle of Trafalgar. You know, there's Trafalgar Square. The Battle of Trafalgar was not really that important in defeating Napoleon. Certainly defeated pretty much all of the French navy. Certainly the Spanish navy, which hardly existed at that point. But the Spanish Armada, that was like a really minor victory. And then what we don't teach in English schools to this day is that we then tried to chase them back to Spain, and then we lost about 40 ships, and it was a huge national embarrassment. And so the English Armada was a failure, but we don't learn about it in school. So history is written. Do
you ever learn anything? Because I believe it's the same exact thing in Russia, you know. But do you ever learn anything? Maybe not like a failure, but at least something, you know, some event where England wasn't as victorious as in others.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And there's a push for this at the moment. This is an interesting thing, because I say we don't learn about it at schools, but I'm only telling half the truth there, so let me explain how the school program works in the UK as opposed to Russia. So if you went to school in Vladivostok or Kaliningrad, It's the same federal school program, right? If that guy from Vladivostok says, what class is коэффициент полезного действия, then the other guy can say, oh, that was like whatever physics class. I don't know, what is that, like third class? Or I don't know, whatever. That can't happen in the UK. There's no such thing. There are certain statutory, that's to say, obligatory topics, but it's up to the school, the individual school, how they interpret the program. So there's no central textbook. There's no central program. There's recommendations. So if you look at the history syllabus, for the national history curriculum, it'll say something like, you have to teach, the formation of Britain and the church, after the Roman occupation. You have to teach the UK's position in the world from 1940s onwards. So it's pretty hard not to teach World War II, but World War II is not actually an obligatory topic. There's nothing in the curriculum that says that you must teach World War II. Now, I've never heard of a school that doesn't teach it. Exactly. Isn't it weird? Isn't it weird? So it'll say something like, you have to teach about the rise of European fascism and conflict and whatever. For example, Hitler's invasion of the Sudetenland and Poland, Winston Churchill's World War II leadership, the Battle of Stalingrad, something like that. But those are all recommendations. You don't have to teach any of it. Pretty interesting, right?
All right. So you're saying that in some schools, there is a possibility that they are being more truthful than others, and they actually possibly teach people about some failures.
I don't know about truthful. I don't think you can sort of lie about it. But I think in Russia, the big bone of contention, not the elephant in the room, but the thing that triggers everyone is the Second World War. I think for us, the equivalent is, and I think it's a fair criticism, schools don't do enough to teach about the more tyrannical aspects of the British Empire. And I think that's fair. That's a good point. We don't do enough to teach about the history of slavery, the history of colonialism, and don't get me wrong, I'm not one of these people who's like, tear all the statues down, it's all bad, it's all terrible. I mean, look at India. The British Empire was pretty harsh on India, but it's also probably one of the best things that's ever happened in Indian history.
Not to China though, Opium War and stuff, That was terrible.
Absolutely. Again, and so we don't teach that kind of stuff at school, but going back to what I was saying earlier, it's up to the school what they want to. If they want to teach it, there's nothing to stop them teaching it. So it depends on the school. That's maybe how I should phrase it. There's no such thing as like a national strict programs.
So there is some flexibility. That was actually something that I was mulling over a few days ago when my friend who moved to Canada, because I believe that this is the difference between what do we call it, like the old world, Europe, and if I can consider Russia,
the old world,
the new world, because they, for instance, and I think it happens in Canada, America, Australia, and New Zealand, where for instance, Australians as a nation, they have recognized, let's say, the damage that they have brought upon the native Aboriginal people, indigenous people, and they actually, officially apologized, and they're trying to do everything possible to make it up to them. Whereas in this world, maybe because the history is so long, because there have been so many mess ups, screw ups, and so on, it's not possible, because I cannot even fathom how in picture Russians are saying sorry to all the
serfs,
or to even earlier, even later, all the ex-Soviet what are they called, republics? Right? For invading communism, for invading them and imposing communism on them, or stuff like that. Because there were lots of deaths and torturing there as well. But nobody wants to actually own up to it. So that's the difference, I think. In other newer countries, people are willing to do that. Maybe not, in a perfect way. Obviously, they're also sometimes, hypocrites and stuff like that. But still, they're at least trying. Whereas here, it's like, Russia, England, Dutch people as well. Yeah, so nobody actually kind of admits, what their nations have done to other people.
Yeah, I think it's a very fair criticism, and it's one of the big trends at the moment in curriculum planning in the UK. Certainly is doing more to highlight that sort of stuff in history. Having said that, I think we can be too harsh on ourselves sometimes. Like, yes, we definitely need to apologize for our past transgressions and our past sins, and we need to make up for slavery, and we need to make up for this, that, and the other. But we didn't invent slavery. Every country is engaged in slavery, and we also ended the slave trade. I'll thank people to remember. So Western liberal democracies are to thank for ending the slave triangle as well as starting it. So it's not as cut and dry as some people like to make it. But
no, totally. I actually just came back from the Seychelles, which once were a British colony, and believe it or not, but they were colonized by both French and British. And they just can't stand French, even though they do speak both languages. But they really like British because eventually the British were the ones who came and ended everything there.
Well, they if you were to go a few hundred miles southeast, I want to say, don't quote me on that, you would come across a very shameful little patch of land with the very romantic name, the British Indian Ocean Territory, otherwise known as Diego Garcia, which we essentially, it's a British territory, and we let it
up till this day.
Yeah, still to this day. We have quite a lot of them. We have about 13, I think, across the world. But there's no people living there apart from American military personnel, because we rent that base, that island, to the American Air Force for a fixed sum every, whatever decade. And all of the people living on the island, we dispossessed, knocked their houses down, and exported them. I was going to say kick them off, but no, like cargo, exported them to the Seychelles and to, is it Seychelles or Mauritius? Or somewhere in the Indian Ocean.
It's really close. Yeah, they're really close to each other.
Well, probably both. And it's one of the most shameful, because people like to get angry about stuff like the Falkland Islands, even though only British people have ever lived there, and Gibraltar and all of that stuff. If you want to get angry about a British territory, that's the territory to be angry about. No one knows about it. It's quite annoying. The British Indian Ocean territory.
When did it happen?
What?
Last century? Or?
No, 1960s. So they just wanted this island for, I don't think they were doing nuclear testing. I think it was like a Cold War thing. They wanted some plane station there. So the American Air Force to this day has and there are some speculations that there's like a black site prison there. So, like how they have Guantanamo Bay, where it's not in America, so they can, fly people in who are suspected of terrorism and lock them up without a trial and, play loud music in their ears and shove stuff up their ass and do all this crazy torture stuff. The same thing they can do in the British Indian Ocean Territory, allegedly. There's no evidence that that's the case, but, who knows? All this crazy black site CIA stuff.
Don't Americans have enough territory? I mean, they're, because they're much bigger than you guys. Don't they have their own stuff, like their own territory where they can do whatever they want?
I think the idea is they call it the empire of bases. So at any point in the globe, they've got these sort of, touch points where they can launch an attack from, or they can control movement through a choke point, or leverage support for opposition against various people and states. Yeah, maybe it's its own kind of tyranny in a kind of messed up way. So we've discussed.
Right. Let's swap to another topic.
We've discussed football, global politics.
Yeah, we're supposed to discuss regional accents and stuff.
Everything except for English we've discussed. What made you think that you would like to discuss the history of English? Why did that come to your mind?
Because honestly, like if you know any sort of courses that I could attend, I would, because well, there's a reason why I'm in love with English, right? Why I decided to dedicate my life to it. So, but unfortunately, I was really unlucky back in my uni years, because we had, I think, like 3 or 4 teachers who were supposed to teach us the subject, and all of them sucked. All of them were just really not good at what they were doing. So that's why I feel like the history of the language that you're learning can really help you to kind of put lots of things into a perspective, you know, and like maybe get a bigger picture onto the language itself, because obviously the language and the culture and the history, they're still, you know, kind of intertwined, right? So that's why it's just an exciting topic for me, and it feels like I could probably get a lot of insights, you know, into certain things if I find out more information. And you seem like a knowledgeable guy, so that's why I was like,
well,
maybe.
Don't put all your money on me just yet. So there are a couple of moments in the history of this, our noble island, and of the English language in general, that can really help you get to grips with its, which we call it, its beating heart. So what for you is, what would you say, thinking about the history of England, and if you don't know what I'm getting at here, feel free to ping it back to me, but what for you is like the moment where the English language starts to develop?
Well, it definitely comes from initially from ancient, whatever it is called, old Germanic language, right? It originates from there.
Careful about chucking that term around, ancient. When we say ancient, when we talk about ancient Britons, we typically mean pre-Roman Britons, right? So the Iron Age people. So these people who, so the Romans, Caesar rocked up with his Roman guys in Britain in 50 something BC. Okay, so just about the turn of the millennium. The people living on the island at this point, they were the ancient Britons. Okay, these were Celtic people. Okay, so these people, they spoke a language which was nothing like modern day English, not even anything like ancient English, like old English, I should say. The language these people spoke was like Welsh, it was like Irish, like Cornish, like Scottish Gaelic, like Cumbrian, like Galician, which is a language spoken in the northwest of Spain, like Breton, if you know where that is, in the northwest of France. This is what would you call it, like a line, a big vertical line of Celtic communities is called the Celtic Band. So the Romans rock up at about the turn of the millennium, about 50 years before the birth of Christ, and then starts the Roman rule of Britain. In this time, a lot of Latin is absorbed into the language of the ancient Britons, but don't forget that these guys' languages, this is nothing to do with English, okay? The word English comes from, as you correctly say, a Germanic tribe called the Angles, who then got together with the Saxons, Anglo-Saxons. So when the Roman Empire started to fall down and started to collapse, the, sort of quote unquote savages of the, the German and the Scandinavian tribes, who up until then, they'd been living outside the realm of civilization, so to speak, they could then start to move around a little bit more freely. Because before that, if they tried to go to England, then the Romans would have, seen them off with a spear. So now you get this mass migration of Angles and Saxons and Germanic people rocking up on the island of Britain, okay? Now, we don't really know what happened. Some people think there was like some huge invasion, some huge battle. I don't think that's what happened. There's not much evidence to suggest that. There's no archaeological evidence of some big epic battle. Most people think that it was just a slow, frankly boring process where Angles and Saxons kept migrating to England and kept taking up positions of power, and eventually
winning everybody out.
Exactly. And so and this period of history is called the Anglo-Saxon migration. Okay, so the Anglo-Saxon.
How long was it? Do you know? Like, I mean, was it centuries or was it thousands of years? Centuries. Okay.
Or about a century.
A century. Okay.
And then at the end of that, now what you've got is the ancient Britons, the Celts. They'd been pushed back to Cornwall, to Wales, to Scotland, to Ireland, and some of them to the north,
like onto the edges, basically.
Exactly. And that's why to this day, you know, this kind of Celtic feel that you get to if you go to Wales or you go to Scotland, you go to Cornwall, even it's got a completely different feel to the rest of England. And even if you go to the northwest of Spain or you go to the northwest of France, people in these parts of the countries, they make cider and they play the bagpipes and they have little artwork with Celtic crosses and gnomes and stuff. Like centuries later, it's still there. It's really fascinating. Now, when you think of like typical English medieval history, you think of like King Arthur and the Stone and Merlin and St. George and the Dragon, all that.
I do.
That's the Anglo-Saxon times. That's what you think of. Okay, so all of this Game of Thrones shit that happened in the Anglo-Saxon period. Okay, so you've got Anglo-Saxon, much like you had like the Russian tribes. What was it? What was the battle where they defeated the Mongols? The Kulikovska battle.
Don't ask me. I told you. I suck at any history. It doesn't matter if it's mine or yours.
Any history. So, but like I think it's Kulikovska. This was like the battle that united all of the Russian tribes, and then you had like Rus after that. So before that happened in England, a similar situation. You've got kingdoms who are all fighting against each other, Game of Thrones style. You've got Wessex, you've got Mercia, you've got Northumbria. In the meantime, we're getting hammered by the Vikings from the east. And then after a few centuries of that, 1066, the Battle of Hastings.
I've heard of that.
Okay, what do you know about the Battle of Hastings?
No, it's not turn the tables. That's enough said. I've heard of that.
Okay. So we got invaded by the French, essentially, by the Normans. This is the key moment.
Norman. Okay. Yeah, French borrowed words, right? That's what I know about.
Okay, you see, the knowledge is in there. So this is, as you suggest. What do you mean by French borrowed words? What were you going to say about that?
Well, because I just heard that there was this Norman, whatever it is called, invasion. Yeah, and that's why. Because I think that's, correct me if I'm wrong, that's when French basically became like the language of elite, and that's why, as far as I know, people who, for instance, were of a higher class, they spoke French, and most of the words that were connected to food, for instance, are borrowed from France. Whereas words, like animals, for instance, which people from higher classes didn't really have to deal with, they were still English. Like, for instance, that's why pork and beef, they're kind of French words, whereas animals, are still English. Right?
That's exactly correct. So that's a good example. So if you look at the words for livestock, for animals, because if you look at Russian, those words are they're all one root, right? You have alina, or look at any
Svinya.
Exactly. The only exception in Russian.
It's a weird example that you just heard. Why would you think of that?
I don't know. It's the first one that came to my head. I love venison. But the only exception in Russian is Korovo Gavyadina, but that's easily explained because that comes from this, from the word Gavyada, which is still a Slavic word, right? An old Slavic root.
I guess.
But yeah, sure. If you look at, as you correctly say, cow, Anglo-Saxon root, pig, Anglo-Saxon, deer, Anglo-Saxon. Then look at beef. What's the French word for cow? Boeuf and boeuf. Or for bull, rather, I should say. Mouton is the French word for sheep, like mutton in English. You have sheep, Anglo-Saxon, mutton, Latin or French. And so this is the really key moment for anyone who really wants to get a good grasp of English. It's to understand this kind of double bookkeeping that we do in terms of Anglo-Saxon and Romance. Well, when I say Romance, I don't mean, you know, sort of rose between the teeth, dancing the tango. I mean, as in the Romantic group of languages, as in Rome, as in Latin. So any words which are more kind of Anglo-Saxon Germanic words, typically they describe something which has been in the culture a long time.
Like household, yeah.
For example, which is down to earth, which is rustic, which is earthy, which is traditional. These are massive generalizations, don't get me wrong. And anytime we want to, we use a Latin word or a word that's come to us through Norman French, any scientific word or any technical word, any abstract concept, a lot of the time, I guarantee you, fancy pants words, I guarantee you they'll be more often Latin than Anglo-Saxon. That's the really key thing to really understanding the nature of English and the history of English. And if you understand that, you understand a lot. If you want to like speak like a guy from the past, if you want to do an impression of someone who's like from the year 1066, you'll speak only using Anglo-Saxon roots. You won't know that you're doing it, but you will do it.
You know, it's kind of tragic though, because if you think it kind of shows you the chasm, you know, between the high class, which were exposed to certain things, but were never exposed to animals or dirt or something household, you know, wise, and vice versa. You know, so means that people of lower class, they didn't even have to learn, you know, the names of food, for instance, because they couldn't even taste it, right? So it's like, no.
Yeah, I think before we sort of all jump on this Marxist bus, I think it's not quite as stark a difference or deeper chasm as you're making it out to be, I think. And this is a perfectly natural process. This is not specific to English. It happens in Russian. Okay, you've got Church Slavonic and Ancient Russian, right? The exact same thing. Only in this case, it was maybe more related to the church as opposed to invading forces. But that's by the by. Yeah, it's interesting to note where so there's something in language called a doublet, right? So a doublet is when, so I had Ira Letsenko on the podcast a year ago almost, and we were talking about like a good example in Russian. You can look, so there's this Greek word, right? A lot of Greek words in Russian, as you know.
That's what I wanted to say. Also, can I interrupt you?
Please,
because you
please.
said like lots of science words came from French, and I was sure that those like academic words mostly came from Greek, no?
Well, a bit of both. A bit of both. This is the thing. So there are different types of doublets. So here's an example in Russian. I'll give you one in English as well. So you've got a Greek root to say extinguish, right? Tushich, is asbestos in Greek, right? In ancient Greek. That undergoes centuries and centuries of evolution, going through Greek into Old Russian, Church stuff, or whatever it is, and eventually you get the Russian word izvest. Okay, so izvest is from this Greek root meaning extinguishable, right? Because lie in English, by the way, L-Y-E is izvest. Lie, it sort of burns even if you pour water on it. That's the idea. So it's called something unextinguishable.
Like this?
Yes. So even if you put a negative root, a negative prefix, okay, on the beginning of that in Greek, a, and what do you have? Asbestos, which in modern Russian we just went and we took that down. We skipped all of those hundreds of years of evolution. We went boom, we're having that, and we got the Russian word asbest. So asbest and izvest are one and the same word, but one has undergone loads of evolution and become a Russian word, and then the other was just stolen from Greek. directly or borrowed from Greek directly. This happens all the time. You get it with collateral adjectives, right? So in English, you have an adjective which is a direct adjective, right? A friend is friendly. A sun is sunny, right? But the moon is not moony. What's the moon? The moon is lunar.
Lunar, yeah.
And I don't need to tell you, where does the word lunar come from? Obviously, Latin.
Wait, but what about solar?
Aha, this is what I was going to say. To conclude the presentation today. Sunny and solar. What do we have there? One is an Anglo-Saxon root. One is a Latinate root. Okay? And this is a linguistic doublet in its finest plumage. What is sunny? A day can be sunny. Sunny weather, sunny picture, sunny photograph, sunny personality, maybe you could say, disposition, right? What's solar? Solar orbit, solar radiation, solar flare, solar system represent, right? And so that is the best example I can think of the difference between something Anglo-Saxon and something Latinate in the English language. The former tends to be down to earth, traditional, earthy, physical, tangible. The latter tends to be esoteric, abstract, technical, scientific, etc.
But not all the time, right? Because there could be examples, for instance, before it's sunny and whatever else it was, you also mentioned friendly, and the first word that came to my mind, because we were
Amicable.
talking about amicable. So it does come from French, doesn't it?
It comes from French through
it does sound fancy, but it's basically the same. I mean, you can describe the same exact thing with these two
you can
words,
describe
right?
the same exact thing in the same sense that you can describe the same exact thing as this is the solar radiation is very nice today, instead of saying it's really sunny today, right? So you've already answered your own question. Amicable, it sounds fancier, more technical, more showy-offy, more aristocratic. Maybe if you were a Norman lord, that might be the word you use. Right? So that's the key to understanding a lot of not only English vocabulary and history, but also the fact that we can say big or little or grand. We can say small or minute or tiny. There's a lot of vocabulary and, annoyingly, a lot of different spelling systems, which have contributed to what English looks like today, multinational and bastardized as it is. But I think that's what gives people such pain when trying to learn the English spelling system, because there isn't one, really.
Yeah, and phonetics. It's crazy. Like, usually in most languages, I mean, I'm sure there are some languages that are as complicated as English, but most languages is like you learn a few reading rules, maybe like one letter or two are dropped, but mostly it's like, it's read the way it is seen, basically. But in English, it's never like this. So I think it has to be taught, And I believe that, let's say, apart from grammar, vocabulary, what else is there? So punctuation as well. Everything is fairly simple, right? But not phonetics, and I guess I always blame it on French all the time. Oh my God, that's a French word. That's why it's so complicated. Like,
damn French. Yeah.
Chorus and choir. That's another example, right?
Chorus and choir. Word and verb. So verb is Latinate. Word is Germanic. Guest and host.
Guest is German, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Can't think of any others. There's loads. Warranty, guarantee. Wallop and gallop, loads, and the
cordial, no?
Cordial and
like I don't know, sincere or something like that. No, doesn't it sound French?
Cordial. I'm naming doublets, but cordial as in accord. Is certainly from French / Latin. But again, doublets are not just some weird, creepy thing about English. It happens in all languages. We've got standard as well.
What's that?
Standard and standard.
What the hell is standard? I've never heard of that.
It's a type of flag that the guy on the battlefield holding this flag so that everyone can see in the distance.
How come you know more Russian than me?
I definitely don't know more Russian than you. What are you talking about?
You know such weird words. I've never.
To be fair, I studied naval history, so again, that's from a lot. Okay. You get a lot of weird words in Russian that are connected with engineering and sailing that come from Dutch and German, kind of weirdly. Like, so if you if you know anything about ships, then you'll learn about Standard, and you'll learn about Bakstag and about Bay de Wind and Geilfwind and Knieper.
That is actually, that is actually hilarious because, and I don't want to sound mean, but you know how Russians are usually super proud of our language, and we constantly say, Russian is, Maguchi Zik and stuff like that.
But don't get me started on that nonsense.
I love my language, so let's not start it. But I just wanted to say that it's funny because, only recently I've started to realize that there are so many borrowed words, and they're borrowed from all over the world. Like it's some of them are English. I recently sometimes, like, when you have several languages in your head, like, you don't really have the connection between them. And I just recently realized that it's like aqualung is aqualung. Like, I didn't even know that it's a lung full of water, like, it just didn't cross my mind, Or like, for instance, my friend told me, because she used to learn French, she told me that karandash is a French word. And I'm like, what? It's not Russian? Because it sounds so Russian, right? But it's not. So
it sounds a bit German, I think.
It does. Yeah. Well, I guess it depends on when you pronounce it with a Russian accent. Yeah.
Das karandash.
Something like that. Yeah. So yeah, it's just funny that I guess we have lots of borrowed words there from all over.
Well, I mean, all words were borrowed at some point, right? Russian hasn't existed since the beginning of time, so all of the words came from somewhere. Like someone once said this to me once, that he said to me, Mike, do you know that there's actually no such thing as English language because all of the words were borrowed from German and Latin? I'm like, okay, I don't understand your argument there. Where do you think Russian came from? It just popped out the ground? It was grown in a greenhouse? Come on, what are you talking about? It's the weirdest thing I've ever heard.
Initially there was only one language, right? That's why there are so many similarities between, like, mum, like, I mean, it's always, almost in all languages, not every language as far as I know, but almost in all languages there is a mum.
That's an interesting point. So first of all, to your first argument, there used to be one language. Certainly like a proto-language, that's what you're saying. So yeah, we can notice that there are similarities between some European languages, some Eastern and Western, and some Indian languages, Sanskrit, for example. And we don't know what came before them, but we know there must have been some parent language because they've got so many common features. So that is called Proto-Indo-European, or PIE, as it's abbreviated to very nicely. Pirajok. So this is this Pirajok language, but that doesn't touch Chinese, that doesn't touch Bantu African, that doesn't touch Native American languages. So I don't think there was one proto-global language, or if there was, I haven't seen any evidence of it. But on your second point about mum, this is something I think a bit deeper, and points to our common, not a language, but common human nature.
Like articulation.
Not necessarily articulation, but I'm talking about onomatopoeia. I'll say that one more time for our ladies and gentlemen at home. Onomatopoeia. So onomatopoeia is a word that sounds like what it's describing. So like hiss or boom or bach, buzz, exactly, yeah. And then slightly more metaphorically, you could argue that whisper is onomatopoeic. And how do you say whisper in Russian?
Shopet.
Exactly.
Yeah, I would say shopet is, but whisper, I wouldn't say so.
Whisper.
Maybe if you whisper it, but I can say whisper.
You could argue that whisper is a better word for whisper than pen, right?
That is
Must
true.
hear that.
Same as scream, for instance. It kind of sounds screaming.
Yeah, yeah. Now, there are some, okay.
But mums.
1 second. I think I've done this on the podcast before.
Okay.
But I don't know, whatever. We can repeat ourselves.
You mean screen sharing? What do you mean? You've done what? You scaring me.
Demonstration.
What are you gonna do?
No, nothing.
Brace yourself.
Okay. I'm gonna draw two shapes for you now. Okay.
All right. Is that a game? Like,
no, it's not a game. No, don't worry, it's not a game. Okay, this is a very common linguistic demonstration. For the ladies and gentlemen who are listening to the audio version of this, just be advised that I am drawing on the left some sort of blobby, cloudy looking shape, and on the right I'm drawing some sort of spiky, cactusy looking shape. Okay, Julia, I want you to imagine that our top geometrists have created these two new shapes, and now we need to make names for them. Okay, I'm not going to tell you which is which, but I can tell you that one of these shapes is called a Kiki, and one of these shapes is called a Bouba. Now I've written them in blue. That's just a neutral color. That shouldn't suggest anything.
Okay.
In your opinion, which shape should be the Kiki and which shape should be the Bouba?
I can't picture anybody else, saying it differently. Of course, the blue one is Bouba and the second one is Kiki. And I don't think it really depends on the language, right? Like, I mean, the language that you speak.
You don't need to think. We know it doesn't depend. The research has been done. This is a very well-researched scientific phenomenon. It's called the Bouba-Kiki effect. I spelled Bouba incorrectly. It should be, I think it's like that. Bouba, I think. I don't remember. You can look it up. You'll find it. And this works no matter what language you speak, no matter where you're from, no matter
Wait, even Asian languages?
Even in Asian languages, even those people can get this right.
That was not nice.
I don't know. You're the one who brought Asians up. I think.
No, no, that's not what I meant. I meant that Asian languages are so different. They're strikingly different from ours.
How different? How different? Because as Steven Pinker put it famously, if aliens descended and listened to a Chinese guy and an American and a Russian and a Swahili and an Aztec speaking, they would conclude that all humans speak one language, because our languages are so similar to each other that it's almost a joke. Our languages are almost all the same.
Well, I've heard that there are some languages, they're super rare. I guess it's not even a minority, but it's like a tiny island, and they sound something like this.
Yeah, so you're talking about click languages. Sort of I've forgotten what the name of it is. But yeah, like Ossa.
Not the one from like the Star Wars,
no, not
a real one.
People, no. Wow, it's been a litany of racist abuse, this podcast. First the Chinese, then the sand people. When will you stop, Julia? But no, all I'm trying to say is that maybe it doesn't work 100% of the time. This one pretty much does. It works 99% of the time, which I think means 1% of people deliberately get the question wrong. But there's definitely something here. There are some sounds which we, in a non-random, non-arbitrary way, map onto not only shapes, but also concepts. If I were to ask people which of these...
Stop sharing, please. I don't really see you properly.
Oh, sorry, my bad. Because, you can ask people like, if one was a fish and one was a bird, most people say Bouba's a fish and Kiki's a bird. And the same... I maybe disagree.
No, actually, no. It makes sense because Bouba kind of reminds me of this, like the fish that kind of flares its cheeks. Like
Yeah, and Kiki maybe sounds like a kiki, like a little bird. But then
like
even if you get more abstract, if you ask them which one is more spiky, which one is more slippery, which one is softer, which one is hotter, which one is colder, they'll all answer pretty much the same way, even if they haven't seen the pictures.
Wait, which one is colder?
I think Bouba's colder.
That's because it's blue.
No, not having seen the pictures, but obviously we've seen the pictures, so this is kind of ruined the data now.
Wait, Boba is colder, you said?
I think Bouba sounds colder.
No, it doesn't sound cold to me.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
It's only about spiky, you would agree, right? Kiki sounds spikier than Bouba.
Yeah, totally.
Right? There's nothing really spiky about the word. It's just, I don't know, it's just one of those.
But can it be not just the sounds, but also our associations? Because maybe I don't know how deep I can dig, but maybe, Kiki reminds us of a certain word which means something spiky, like a cactus, for instance.
Yeah, maybe.
But a cactus could be also named because of it.
But the thing is, like, you could say that argument definitely works about nature. So like Kiki maybe sound like more like bird song than it does the sound of a fish. But then does it sound spiky because it sounds like the word cactus? Probably not. What's the Chinese word for cactus? I expect it's probably not anything similar to our word for cactus. And this effect works on Chinese people and works on Westerners and works on Americans and everyone. And so we come on to the original question about the words for mum and dad, which, as you correctly say, in a lot of different languages, the word for mum is a kind of suckling sound, right? Like that kind of sound, like suckling milk from your mother. Num 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 mum 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 mum
So
mum.
First
that kind
reflex,
of sound.
basically.
Exactly. And the sound for dad is very often with a d, a t. Okay, like that, as in, imagine you're in your mother's arms and you want to reach out to your father on the other side of the room. Da, da, to da, dad, come here. That kind of sound in a lot of different languages.
I just recalled actually, and I don't want to, sound ignorant or something, but I believe it was Georgian, where I was really surprised to find out. And again, I might be talking nonsense, but it's just my friend. I remember. Okay, good. Safe zone. So my friend, she's Georgian, and she had her parents, in her phone. So every time they called her, that was back in uni years. So they would call her, and I'd be like, "Oh, that's her dad," calling her, and that would be actually her mom. So I don't remember what the words were. I think it was Didi or dot. Like I think it was something with D, and obviously I would think it's a Georgian word for a dad, but it was vice versa. So I was shocked.
Really? It's like the other way around.
Yeah,
it's like the Bulgarians who shake their head. No, they shake their head when they want to say yes.
Yeah, but these are again more like exceptions than
well, the exception kind of proves the rule. But I mean, that's just a hypothesis. There's no evidence that the suckling onomatopoeic theory of why mum or mother is so similar in different languages is true. It's just one theory. There could be another explanation. I don't know.
Sounds legit to me.
But sounds legit is not scientific evidence, unfortunately. Would that it were. There we go. All right. Julia.
Deda. I googled it. Deda.
That is mum.
Yeah.
Savages.
It's weird, right?
This
is really a racist podcast.
Yeah, I know, right? With our white walls. Well, that's put me in the mood for some khachapuri and some chakakbili.
Yes.
Oh, I love it. I made some the other night. Do you know what you can't buy in England, which is really annoying? You cannot buy khmeli suneli. Suneli. I always get it mixed.
Is that like the spices? Like the
yes, khmeli suneli is like this spice, really popular in Georgian cuisine. So, and I made it myself. I bought all of the separate spices you need, and I put it in a blender, and I made it. And I made some chakakbili. I made some satsibili sauce. Oh, forget about it. The best.
You're a fan. You should have. Okay. Anyway, I was like thinking, if you really want to come back to Georgia one day, you probably shouldn't call them savages.
Yeah, or enter via South Ossetia because they're not fans of that. They will kick you out, and no mistake.
Yeah. All right, shall we wrap up? You have a class, right?
I do have a class, and we've been going for like an hour and a quarter, so we're getting better. We're nearly in the time limit.
I know. Last time it was like 90 minutes, right? I think.
Yeah.
Or even more.
A bit more.
Yeah.
Hopefully I won't have to compress this file too much to fit it onto YouTube.
When is it coming out?
So I'm going on Antoine's show soon. I've got Volva coming
and I just met him today.
Okay, well, we'll all pass on each other's regards. And then I don't know when this is coming out. I only release them once a fortnight now because people say they can't watch them quick enough. Especially when a monster episode like this comes out. So I don't know.
What your usual episodes are 40 minutes? Why are you saying
about an hour? No, I'm only being half serious. It's not that long. This one, but yeah. But once people go over the hour mark, they start to get a bit tired. And
yeah, that is true. That is true.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Well, always a pleasure. Never a chore.
Me. Yeah.
My pleasure.
Let's do it one more time, and I'll ask you some more questions so you can teach me more something that you know. You seem to know a lot about different spheres.
Well, don't quote me on anything because I'm most likely completely full of shit. So, on that disappointment, I will see you.
Suspicious information.
No, I'm only joking. All right. Thanks for coming on, Yulia, and I will see you when I see you.
Bye-bye. Hopefully soon. Sooner than half a year.
Let's hope.